When people told Reddit their past, their stories, explained themselves with Reddit stories, foretold the future. Not really. But foretold the future with Reddit stories. The best place by the monitor was kept for the Reddit teller. Welcome back to your cozy spot by the screenlight. Today, I have some new tales to impart with some interesting outcomes. Tonight's stories have an interesting twist. It seems that people have gravitated to Reddit to ask for relationship advice. And who am I but to impart some wisdom? And I can't stress this enough. Lack thereof. The story stems from Relationship Advice from Throw RA78WDHSG. I wish I could pronounce that. Titled, My Vegan Girlfriend Wants Me to Get Rid of My Cat. I can't believe I'm about to type this, but here we go. I've been dating my girlfriend for 7 months. She's amazing, and we're super compatible in a lot of ways. She's an outspoken vegan, and she made it clear at the start of our relationship that it was important to her that any partner had to have similar cruelty-free values. Me, already being a pescatarian, had little difficulty transitioning to a fully vegan, plant-based diet. My girlfriend was proud of me for going cruelty-free, and everything seemed, well, I guess. We became the vegan couple on our college campus. Then there's my cat, Mittens. I've had her for 3 years, and I adore her. She's such a sweet and cuddly cat. However, my girlfriend was always a little apprehensive around her, and she blamed it on not growing up around cats. After a while, we sort of made a tacit agreement to mostly hang out at her apartment instead of mine, so Mittens never really came up again in conversation. Fast forward through all the quarantine stuff, my girlfriend and I have spent a lot of time together during this pandemic, and we've started talking about taking our relationship to the next level. We began seriously looking at either buying a new apartment together or having one of us move in with one another. However, after a lot of talking and planning, my girlfriend sat me down and dropped a bombshell on me. She said that with this next phase of the relationship, she did not see a future with me unless I was willing to give away Mittens. She said she believed owning a cat is unconscionable for vegans because they hunt mice and eat meat, and because the very act of owning a pet is a violation of vegan principles. Needless to say, I was stunned. I told her that I was absolutely not willing to give up Mittens, and she had no choice but to eat meat. So I was reducing harm as much as possible by buying reputable brands of cat food. Plenty of vegans own cats and think along those same lines. My girlfriend got mad and said, "How much flesh does your cat eat? How many animals died to make all that food? Would you be okay with that being human flesh?" I got mad and told my girlfriend that I would have really appreciated her telling me about her cat opinions before we got serious. She went on and on about cats killing animals, and I ended the conversation right there. I was so angry that I left my girlfriend's apartment, and I snuggled with Mittens when I got home. Although the mood soured a bit when my girlfriend sent me a link to a Reddit thread advocating for the extinction of domestic cats. I think it goes without saying that I'm not going to get rid of my cat. However, it pains me to think that an otherwise wonderful relationship could be ending because of a difference in ideology. I don't even really understand where my girlfriend's coming from because, like I said, a lot of vegans own cats. Now, granted, cat ownership can be a controversial topic in vegan circles, and I probably would not have gotten a cat if I had been vegan at the time, but I have Mittens now, and she deserves to eat. Yes, I've researched vegan cat food, but Mittens has some digestive issues, and my vet strongly cautions against it. I've talked to some of my vegan and vegetarian friends, and they all think my girlfriend has lost her mind. Some have suggested that it's not about Mittens and my girlfriend just wants an excuse to end it. They probably don't understand why I haven't broken up yet, but I care about my girlfriend so much. I'd hate for this bizarre curveball to be the end of a wonderful thing. I want to try and work something out. Where do I even go from here? I will not compromise on Mittens, and I don't think my girlfriend will compromise either. Part 2. OP actually updated his story with a very short and sweet response. So, we broke up, obviously. I would never, ever give up my cat Mittens. Many users have said that the situation was about control, not veganism, and looking back, I do see a pattern of control on my girlfriend's part. I was blind to it, I guess. I called my girlfriend and said I was not willing to give up Mittens under any circumstances, and given the recent issues we've had, and our incompatible views, I thought it was best that we parted ways. I said she deserved a partner that shared her values. She then asked if we were breaking up, and I said yes. There was some anger on her end, but otherwise the situation actually went better than I expected. Here's a picture of the wonderful Mittens. Now, following the stem of relationship advice, I think you're both idiots. Personally. One, your girlfriend is a complete fool because a lot of people own cats. A lot of vegans own cats, and anyone who believes that you can't own a cat as a vegan is an idiot. Now, most of them are kind of insane. Not because of their dietary choices. I actually think a lot of vegan diets are very healthy and good for you. I just think they're extreme and crazy people. Two, I think OP is also kind of an idiot. Because he attempted to put a cat on a vegan diet. And thank goodness for a sane vet that advised him against it. Because, wow. If you didn't have Mittens, you both would be made for each other. You're a pushover, and she is a terrible, terrible person. But yeah, I hope that advice sticks. You both need to be better. Do better. Moving down the river of love along our little love boat, we land along another story in the relationship advice category, titled, "My wife keeps tying my boots after I've told her to keep her hands off of them. I tried to teach her a lesson and really hurt her feelings." This was by Throw R.A. Shoes. Yes, I know the title is bizarre, and I can't believe I'm actually writing this. My wife is a neat freak. Always has been. She throws notes on my desk out, assuming that they're garbage. My belongings get rearranged to the point where it takes me hours to find them. It's something I've come to accept. I'm not happy about it, but we have a pretty happy marriage on the whole. I'm a volunteer EMT, and I keep my boots unlaced up against the wall next to my clothes hamper so that I can throw them on along with my uniform if a call comes in during the middle of the night. Well, my wife has taken to tying my boot laces when she sees them untied. Not only does she tie them, but she tightens them and double knots them to the point where I need to undo the knot, open up the boot, and let a little slack out to fit my heel into them. I ignored it the first 2 times, but the third time she did it, I made it a point to bring it up to her the next day. I very calmly said, "Hun, I appreciate that you want everything neat, but please do not touch my boots in the future. Time is of the essence when I'm going on a call, and at 2 in the morning, I don't have time to unlace them and open them up. It's not just a minor inconvenience, it's people's lives. So I would appreciate if you just left them alone. She rolled her eyes, said I was being dramatic, and that she wouldn't help me out by keeping my things neat in the future. Well, she never stopped. No matter how many times I've asked her, told her, begged her, she just laughs and says, "Well, you know how I am." The other night, a page went out for a CPR in progress. I went to throw my boots on, and there they were, once again, tightened beyond recognition. So I'm sitting there at the edge of the bed, cursing, trying to get my boots open, and fumbling due to the stress of the situation. My wife opened her eyes, groggily looked at me, and asked, "Don't you need to get on that call?" I know I was in the wrong here, and I regret it. I slammed the boot into the ground and yelled, "Yes, I do. I would have been out the door 5 minutes ago, except some stupid mother screwed with my goddamn boots again." My wife got up without another word, walked into the bathroom and slammed the door. I got my boots open and went on the call. By the time we arrived, the police had gotten her back, so I didn't have to do CPR. But I was sweating and shaking, thinking my delay could have cost a life. I got home and my wife wasn't talking to me. She ignored me the entire day until we finally sat and talked. She said I had scared her with how angry I got, and she thought I was going to hit her, and she didn't know how I was capable of getting so angry. As a note, I have never raised a hand to her, nor have I ever yelled at her before. I am absolutely not a violent person in any way, shape, or form. I apologized for yelling at her, and I acknowledged that I hadn't meant to snap at her. I was frustrated when the situation, as I needed to get to the person in need of CPR, I needed to get there as soon as possible. And it was a delay that I really didn't need to happen. Once again, I pleaded with her to please not touch my boots because there were literally lives on the line. She told me that if I was going to overreact and make her afraid, that she would never touch my boots again because she didn't want to live like that. Well, last night before I got into bed, I had a sinking feeling. So I went over and checked my boots, and I was very disappointed to find them tightened up again. So I decided to show her how it felt. I went over to her closet and pulled out her running shoes. I unlaced the shoelaces on both of them, removed them from the shoes completely, curled them into each other's little coil, put them inside the shoes, and put them back. I then went to sleep. At 6:15, I was woken up by my wife screaming, "How could you? Why would you do this?" Holding up both laces and laceless shoes with tears in her eyes. My wife likes to go for an early morning run, and I knew she would want to get out the door as soon as possible. I smiled and said, "Well, you know how I am. I just like things neat." She continued sobbing and walked out of the room. So by the time she was all laced up again, it was raining, so she missed out on her run. I actually feel pretty terrible about that because I really only wanted to delay her, not ruin her plans completely. At this point, she's alternating between crying that I went out of my way to hurt her and ignoring my presence. I acknowledge that what I've done was pretty childish and not all that constructive. I just don't know what to do. She said through tears, "You admitted that you were totally in the wrong for yelling at me, and then you turned around and took it out on me in a different way. What's wrong with you?" The problem is, to her, an apology means taking on 100% of the fault. When I apologized for blowing up, she took that to mean she was 100% in the right and that my feelings were completely unjustified. So at this point, I haven't apologized for ruining her run, because she'll take that to mean that she wasn't wrong to touch my boots. I've tried to have these discussions, but it's in one ear and out the other. We have such a good relationship otherwise, but I feel like this issue has reached a tipping point and it's going to continue to result in arguments until we resolve it. How do I make things right with my wife while still letting her know that I won't tolerate her disrespecting my property anymore? As some little side notes, one, my wife has never been diagnosed as having OCD. As an EMT, I'm very careful about labeling someone as having a disorder, as I don't have the proper qualifications to make that diagnosis. I do agree that it's time for her to see somebody and get a proper diagnosis and address these issues. 2. My boots lace up in the front of the zipper on the side. They're not a full unzip, but rather an unzip to open them a little bit. The way my wife is tying them makes them impossible to get on even with the zipper down. They're weatherproof and great for standing on rough terrain or the highway after accidents. They're only about a year old and were actually a gift from my wife. I've not considered Velcro before, but I am a bit hesitant to do that as I don't know if they would catch on things or wear out quicker. I've tucked the laces in, but she still tied them up. 3. This is a bit of compulsive behavior on my part. I don't leave my boots in the garage because my mother was a smoker growing up, and that's where she would smoke. So I would end up with ashes on my shoes and having them reek of tobacco after. So I developed the habit of wearing them into my home. Also, if I leave them there, they're likely to get moved someplace safe where it will take me even longer to find them. Putting the boots in the closet, she found them and tied them. Putting them under the bed or out of sight, they were found, tied, and moved to the closet. 4. I honestly believe that a footlocker or any other kind of box would get moved to where I would have to wake up to find it. Not only wake up, I would have to wake her up to tell me where it is. If it's locked, then my keys are likely to go missing. For some reason, sitting on my dresser is not appropriate, but in the pocket of a jacket downstairs in the closet is. 5. I'm likely going to start putting my boots in the car, though I had to laugh at the people suggesting decoy boots. As much as it may seem like it, I'm not living in a spy versus spy cartoon. And 6. I'm a volunteer EMT. We respond from home. We don't have sleeping quarters, and I work overnight shift, so I sleep during my shift, get out of bed when a call comes in, drive to the building, and take the ambulance to the scene. This is a typical type of volunteer organization. Paid EMS is more likely to have sleeping quarters or even require EMTs to be in the truck throughout their shift. Community-based EMS is more likely to take on 911 calls and respond to emergencies, whether paid or volunteer. Private EMS is more likely to take transports requests such as to and from dialysis or chemotherapy, as well as a hospital to nursing facility discharges. The story continues with a part 2 update. I've gotten a few requests for updates, but I didn't want to post anything until I felt like I really had anything to say. A lot has happened in the past 2 weeks, so I'm going to try to go over it as best as I can. My wife and I started talking again. We had a very serious conversation, and I did apologize for what I did to her running shoes. And then I told her that I had to speak some truth, and I wanted her to promise me that she wasn't going to roll her eyes or interrupt me or scoff or get sarcastic with me, which she did. I told her that I wasn't kidding about my boots, that while most of the time I caught geriatric transports, falls, and nausea, there were instances where response times really were of the essence, and I didn't have time to play around with my boots in the middle of the night. I told her that there have been many times where my intervention has been critical in saving a life, when my training has helped me recognize an underlying emergency or when a call I made ensured that a patient was prioritized upon arrival at the hospital. I explained that a lot of the stuff I see, I don't tell her because I don't want to give her nightmares or make her worry about me. She actually listened, and didn't dismiss what I had to say. She responded that she was only trying to help by keeping things neat. I responded, "But you're not, sweetie. I'm not trying to be mean, but you're not helping. You're hindering me. One day it may be the difference between life and death. I need you to not touch my gear. It's where I know where it is. It's where I can easily find it in a short amount of time. And if you move it, you're impeding emergency response. I don't care if it looks neat. It serves a function. It doesn't look pretty. If you want to help me, please leave my gear where it is." A few nights later, I had my friend Officer Rich come over. Officer Rich was one of the 2 cops that did CPR on the victim that night. The 3 of us sat on our deck and we had a few social distancing beers. He talked about getting there, doing CPR, giving Narsen, waiting for the ambulance, and getting her back shortly before we got there. He then pulled out a few photos of a car accident that I had worked. He showed them to my wife and pointed out,
"This car went into a tree. Your husband crawled into the wreck, put a collar on the driver, and stayed in there, giving him oxygen until we can get him out. And over here, your husband pulled the 3-year-old out of this wreck. And on this one, your husband recognized that a driver had a stroke and took her to the stroke center, which likely saved her life."
After that, I told her I had something I wanted to show her and asked her for the same promise I'd asked earlier. When she agreed, I showed her a video on YouTube of a police body cam from an overdose. The video showed how critical time is in getting someone back and the training someone has to go through in order to give the drug, do CPR, and utilize an AED. I told her, "I'm not trying to attack you. I don't want to have a fight. But I want you to understand what I go through. That I hope that every call I go on is transporting a boo-boo, because otherwise it means that if I don't do everything right, someone could die. If I don't get out that door as quickly as possible, someone could suffer brain damage while they're waiting for me to give them oxygen. If I'm upset and shaking because I had to waste time opening my boots, I might miss something critical and someone might not make it." She acknowledged that she understood, and she told me she hadn't really thought about the danger of what I do until the other night when she saw the photos of the wrecks. I told her that I think she has OCD, and I think that she needs to see a therapist because it's hurting our marriage. I listed examples of her throwing important stuff out, moving things without permission, and messing with my gear. I offered to go together and said I'd be willing to work on things together. After I pointed out the pattern, she agreed that it was time to speak to someone. She wants to think about whether she wants to go together or by herself, but she promised me that she's going to try to change her patterns. I brought up her saying she thought I was going to hit her, and she acknowledged she'd been with guys who'd flew off the handle with little provocation and scared her. That she'd never seen me get that angry and it triggered her because she didn't think that I was capable of blowing up like that. She's been very emotional lately and has been going through mood swings. She's been worried about me going out on calls. The other day she started crying and said, "I hope you know how much I appreciate what you do." Knock on wood, since we had the big talk, she hasn't touched my boots. Is everything resolved? No, not by a long shot. But she does seem to have a new appreciation for what I do. Thank you for joining me by the monitor. And to everyone listening and enjoying this content, please feel free to leave a like and subscribe to hear more of these stories stemming from tragic to comedic to downright horrific. And as always, see you in the next chapter.